Welcome to the Business of Dance podcast, where you'll learn what it takes to create your dream professional dance career.
Join us as we dive into the insights and experiences of the world's top dance industry professionals, including dancers, choreographers, agents, casting directors, educators, and other dance industry experts.
We explore a diverse range of topics, from personal development and mental skills to audition techniques, creating meaningful industry connections, social media marketing, seeking out dance agents and casting opportunities, on-the-job etiquette, talent unions, pitching to the media, health, finances, and so much more.
Here is your host, Menina Fortunato.
And I'm really excited for today's guest. It's going to be a real treat, and I think a little bit different from what we are used to when we're interviewing guests. Her name is Juliet Prowse. She's the author of Born to Dance. She is the niece of the famous Juliet Prowse, the dancer. She never really intended to become an author, but she spotted a little red suitcase in her parents' attic, filled to the brim with articles of her famous aunt, the dancer entertainer Juliet Prowse. She felt she just had to tell the story. As a seasoned communications professional, Juliet, the niece, was used to writing, but to ensure the authenticity of her first book, Juliet went through over 1,000 newspaper articles and letters, largely written by her dancing aunt to her mother, the author's grandmother, and spoke to over 20 people who had performed with Juliet. Now, Juliet Prowse, the dancer, was known as Big Juliet, and the niece was Little Juliet in the Prowse household. And Little Juliet inherited her aunt's athleticism and became a South African runner, but she was never graceful as her famous aunt was. Born to dance. She's got an MBA from the University of Cape Town in South Africa and a science degree from the University of Nebraska. And she is tuning in from Cape Town. Now, if you do not know who Juliet Prowse is, the dancer, she was truly an icon in the dance world. She's no longer with us. She passed away in 1996, although she was born in 1936. So dancers, none of you were born, and neither were your parents, and maybe your grandparents were born at that time. She was a British American dancer and actress who was known for her stunning long legs. She was actually born in Bombay, which is now called Mumbai, but she was raised in South Africa, and she began training in dance at the age of 4. By 14, she was already performing with the Johannesburg Festival Ballet. And then in 1960, her breakthrough role was in the film Can-Can, starring alongside Frank Sinatra, where she also captivated Soviet leader Union Nikita Khrushchev. That same year, she appeared opposite Elvis Presley in G.I. Blues, which cemented her reputation in Hollywood. She's worked on TV and film and stage, headlining in major musicals like Sweet Charity, Chicago, Mames, Sugar Babies in Las Vegas, as well as national tours. And she is one of the highest paid female performers in the 1970s, where she earned a $1 million contract, which at that time was completely unheard of. So please welcome, without further ado, we have little Juliet Prowse. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello.
Now, what a tongue tie. I was trying to introduce you, but then introduce your aunt. And the crazy part is you both have the same name. So we have to start there. How on earth did you get named after your famous aunt?
So my father only had the one sister, and he wanted to name me after his sister. My mom wanted to name me Elizabeth, so that became my middle name. So on the book, I'll show you the book quickly. I have both our names, Juliet Prowse, and then to differentiate myself, I said it was by Juliet E. Prowse. So it's been a blessing, actually, having her name. She was well known in South Africa, as much as she lived in the US for 36 years. She went to Los Angeles in 1959 for the movie, Can-Can, as you said, and she stayed there for the rest of her life and would come back on holidays. But South Africans claim her as, one of the South Africans that did it, that made it. And so throughout my life, when I would say my name, it could be at a random copy shop picking up some stuff or whatever, people know her name and would comment and say, and there's a famous dancer by that name. Initially I was a bit shy about it, but then I eventually would just say, yes, she's my aunt. And now I'm like, yes, and I've written a book about her. So, yeah.
Has anyone
Wonderful.
ever questioned you, like if you made a reservation, like when she was alive, was there ever a time where you made a reservation for like a dinner or something where someone legitimately thought it was your aunt that was showing up as big celebrity? Did that ever happen? Or
well, I didn't really, because I was in my 20s, late 20s when she died. So I wasn't making necessarily a lot of reservations and things like that. But a funny little side story, my grandmother would never really tell people about the link, that Juliet Prowse was her famous daughter, until she couldn't get a booking at like a fancy restaurant. And then she would say, the booking is for Juliet Prowse. And then suddenly they would like find a table,
of course.
5 minutes earlier, they had no space.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I know one of the big themes and the connection, obviously, is you wrote a book on your aunt. And what piqued the interest in doing this book? Was this ever part of her wishes, or was it the discovery of all of the writings that inspired this, or what inspired you to write this book?
So I actually had a fear of writing, which makes this even more amazing for me that I actually produced a book and it's published. So I didn't really have an idea that I would write about her until I found that little red suitcase. And I started going through it. So she went to London as a 17-year-old in the 50s. And I was curious what the reviews said. Could I glean anything from it about her life? And actually, there was a lot of information for the younger people as part of this. They probably don't specifically know she was engaged to Frank Sinatra.
Yes, I read that.
He was a really big deal in the actually from about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so she catapulted into the limelight. And then, of course, the movie with Elvis Presley, she had a little romance with him at the same time. He was much closer in age, and they had quite a lot of fun together. And so the press really loved that. So she had a lot of media coverage, I'd say, in the 60s in particular. So I'm wading through them. And as I'm wading through them, I'm starting to write down quotes. I thought, she has it initially started with, she has 3 grandchildren that will have never met her because they were born after she died. And you can read about people on Wikipedia, but you don't know the character of the person. And I knew my aunt, and she was a real character. She was a dancer's dancer. She loved dancing. She loved the tribe of dancers, but she was funny and generous and kind. And I just wanted to try and cheeky as well, try and encapsulate that in the book and just leave a legacy for her. I mean, yeah, as it progressed, I was like, I also want to maybe let dancers know about what she achieved. And I think I've done that through the book.
I'd love to touch more on her achievements, because these dancers might not have a clue who we're even talking about. And if you haven't done your homework, this is definitely an assignment for you. You need to look up, just go onto YouTube. There's tons of videos from live shows, from movies and such. But I'd love for you to just kind of touch on some of her biggest achievements. Like one of the things I read was she got $1 million contract in the 70s and got some top female entertainer award. And she was, I don't know if she was competing or she got the same award. Clarify this, with Barbara Streisand and Liza Minnelli. Was she the same generation, or did she get the same award, or what did I read about that? Can you clarify?
Essentially, she started out in Hollywood in movies. She had a 20th Century Fox contract, but she's essentially not a movie star, and she loved the stage more than anything. So she wanted to be back on stage, and she didn't really like the way the process worked in the movies. And she wasn't trained as an actress, a dramatic actress. I mean, that's really, so she was on screen and she was in some movies. I don't know, in the end, she probably ended up doing about, let's say, 6 or 7 movies. But they besides G.I. Blues, the G.I. Blues was a success and Can-Can was a reasonable success. But I think, as any dancer knows, like, the opportunities don't always just flood in, and you've got to create your own opportunities. That's certainly what she did. So she wanted to get it back on stage. She had a fight with 20th Century Fox. They kept there was a production in the 60s called Irma la Douce, and It launched on Broadway, I think in 61, and then she was asked to do it in Vegas. And 20th Century Fox kept saying, is it good for you? Anyway, she broke out of her contract. She got fined and then created her own company. And through her own company, she created her own act for Las Vegas, which she started. Oh, wow. She did an act in Las Vegas called the Juliet Prowse Show from 1962 to 1983.
Wow. And long run.
Yes, that's a long run. And Vegas is quite hard, actually. I mean, I've chatted to...
Residency shows don't last that long for especially one star the entire time.
Yeah. I flew to the US in 2022 to chat to people who work with her. And as one of the guys has done multiple production, and I went to meet him in Vegas. He had a production they called MJ, The Evolution, about Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. And he was saying the difference now between today and when they were doing it, they would do 2 shows a night, 28 days. No, wow. I think they had like 1 day off or half a day off, one show off in 2 weeks kind of thing. So it was like, yeah, it was strenuous for a dancer. But in doing her act, she also did musical theatre that she produced through her own company. So she would maybe find a production. There was one called The Boyfriend, or I'm just trying to think of some of the other ones. She eventually also did, when she did Sweet Charity with Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon. So Gwen Verdon launched it on Broadway, and then Juliet did it in Las Vegas and in London. And she won award. That was her first awards that she won. She won Female Entertainer of the Year for Sweet Charity in Las Vegas. Yep. And then Sweet Charity won awards, and she won awards in London. In the 70s, she was doing more of her act, but her act got longer, and as opposed to, so in the beginning, it was maybe a 45-minute act, whereas when she rose to more, let's call it fame in Sweet Charity, she got a full hour and a half to perform in Las Vegas. So it's an hour and a half twice a night, sorry. And that's a lot. It was a lot, especially... I mean, probably just to know, there's stuff on YouTube. I still have things that I'm adding to YouTube videos, and there's the channel that I have is Juliet Prowse Dancer, and there's still more to add about her act. But just back to the awards, I think it's AGFA, the Guild of Variety Artists. They would have awards for shows in Las Vegas. And she won that a further 3 times, Female Entertainer of the Year. And yes, Barbara Streisand, Liza Minnelli, and Shirley MacLaine were also performing in Vegas at the time. Actually, I heard from one of them that when Shirley MacLaine, because Shirley MacLaine is more of a movie star, when she wanted to do her show in Vegas, have a show, she actually chatted to my aunt because my aunt had been in Vegas much longer. But also, probably for the dancers and to know is that she was really dedicated to showing the quality of dance. So she did, for herself and her dancers, she sort of tried to select the really good quality dancers. And then her productions also won best sequence or best production in a main room in Vegas. And she would do sort of really strenuous dancing in a way, lifts and twirls, and
she was so strong technically,
so athletic. Yeah, she's very athletic.
So, like her legs, dancers, you got to watch her videos, like legs for days, and she had these gorgeous leg extensions, which if you look at older dancers of that era, they weren't doing that type of movement at the time. And even her costuming, I found very ahead of her time as well. Like she was a little bit more, let's say, risque for that era.
Okay. She certainly was. So she definitely was. I mean, what I discovered in writing this book when she was in the 1950s. So she went London, Paris, a show in Italy, and then a show in Spain. And just her character, I knew she must have had the, chutzpah and drive, but she had this, she was waiting to hear if she was going to get into another show. And she thought, no, she and 2 other dancers were going to create an act and sell, just sort of to like 3 dance numbers and sell it to the Northern Italian clubs. And she did get to, they'd take her up as, as maybe a pre-show. and a TV company wanted to film it. And then they were so horrified by her costumes. And what I read was you couldn't show your stomach in Spain.
I know. She had abs of steel and was showing it off in that era.
She was showing it off. And I'd say also what she got really from the beginning, when she broke out of the 20th Century Fox contract and created her own act, is working with the best. So going to the best costume designer. I mean, things cost a fortune. There was one article in the TV Guide, a whole article about her and her costumes. And she would have like a little beaded top to show, and it would show off her legs as like an opening number. So it was just like a white chiffon-y beaded top. It cost $1,000 in 1964.
Wow.
And that costume designer was eventually the first costume designer was Ray Gagnon, who then partnered with Bob Mackie, and Bob Mackie did all the famous costumes.
Yes, so he was Tina legendary Turner, in Las Vegas. Bob Mackie, dancers, you need to look him up. His work was the most extravagant costumes in Vegas.
Oh, if you think of Cher's got some costumes that are like
yes, very famous costume designer,
feathers and things like that. So just on what she got right from the beginning. So she got engaged to Frank Sinatra. It was a funny, I mean, the fact that they got engaged, it wasn't in a typical relationship like the rest of society.
She broke up with him, though. Is that right? Did I read that right?
It was weird because he was dating multiple people while he was dating her, and then she sort of was, started dating one other guy, and blah blah blah. They got engaged. It was that kind of scenario, and so not as we know it, in other relationships, but she had just really started sort of in 1961, started getting a lot of opportunities. And Frank Sinatra had been married to Ava Gardner before that and didn't want his wife to work. And Juliet was about, how old was she then? She was about 25. And she really would never, she was meant to dance. It was in her spirit, in her being, so the relationship ended. What I was going to say was then, so she, almost at the same time as the engagement ending, 20th Century Fox contract ends, and she decides to do her own act. She asks Frank Sinatra's lyricist and composer to write original music for her. And they just happen to be the guys that have won Academy Awards for, these are classic old songs of Ain't That a Kick in the Head or Love and Marriage, And they first went to Sinatra to say, is it okay that we work with Juliet? But, and they were like, and he was like, sure, go ahead, I think the point I'm making there is she just would go and try and work with the best and work hard and believe that she come, create a dynamic show.
Well, I get the theme of she definitely is not someone that waits for permission to do things. The fact that she created opportunities for a female act in Las Vegas to run as long as it did, working with the best people, getting $1 million contract. That is not somebody who's just waiting with their hand out, waiting for an opportunity. That's really a great example of a dancer who created opportunities, which I think is really important for the younger dancers to hear, because oftentimes everybody's waiting to be discovered, so to speak, rather than taking things into their own hands and say, I'm not waiting for permission. I'm going to create it myself. I'm going to put myself on a stage. Now, how did she do that? Do you know the backstory of how did she get $1 million contract? How did she even get her own show?
Because she started in 1962 and she created the let's say the 45-minute act, original music and some what she chose to do, because she's quite comedic as well, is to satirize famous women, so sort of rip them off a bit. She was very cheeky, actually. Her first act was around the time of the film Cleopatra. In the filming of the film Cleopatra, Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor meet each other, and they were both married at the time to other people. So my aunt does an act called Cleo, Nymph of the Nile. And it's written about taking a dig at Elizabeth Taylor, who she did know personally, and it was sort of laughed at. So I think that the act that she first created, she would go to. It was still the era of supper clubs, And for the younger listeners, supper clubs were really high society, sort of, in tuxes and dressed very well, going out for dinner and listening to maybe big band music or Frank Sinatra singing. And so she slotted into that. And there were a number of clubs in Vancouver and Miami. And so her act wasn't just for Vegas. There was a club called The Cave in Vancouver. And I'm not sure if she performed at the Duval Hotel, but I think that anyway. But so she took her act around the country. Probably to add is that she did perform at the Winter Gardens in New York, but the theater press were not impressed with her act in New York. And when she went from there to Miami, and the newspaper articles were, the person who reviewed her there said, the problem is that the theater, they were theater reviewers, and Juliet was doing a nightclub act. So they were reviewing the wrong,
wrong type of show.
The wrong type of show. And they were, and they went, whenever she did her act, it wasn't just in Las Vegas. So just on the $1 million, that was for 16 weeks of work. And then she'd take the show around the country, and also to Puerto Rico on an annual basis.
And I have to back up. When you said Vancouver, do you mean Vancouver, Washington, or Vancouver, BC in Canada?
BC.
Really?
There was a weird club called The Cave that had these stalagmites or stalactites coming off the ceiling.
I wonder if that still exists, because I'm from Vancouver. That's why I'm really curious. I'm like, I've never heard of this. I need to look that up.
It doesn't exist. It's closed down, and they've sold off I think they sold some of I don't know which ones hang from the ceiling, the stalagmites. Artists would often go to Vancouver first and try out their brand new act with maybe a softer audience, a more amenable audience before they took it to Vegas.
Are easier to please. And
yes.
Not such harsh crowds like New York.
I'm not sure if I read, like Diana Ross, a lot of the stars would go and try out in different places that were a little bit of a nicer audience.
Okay. Good to know that Vancouver has a nicer audience. I like that. Why didn't you just taught me something about my own city I'd never even heard of? I didn't know there were supper clubs in Vancouver, and that's amazing.
The interesting thing about the supper clubs, when she performed, so so every year, so she was a hit, and then they wanted her back, or new clubs wanted her, and there was a club it was called the Persian Room at the Plaza Hotel, and I mean, because they were so used to singers and bands, they didn't even have a stage or changing facilities for a dancer. So she had to sort of build a little stage.
That's amazing. Yeah. When she did have a residency in Vegas, was it at one of the hotels on the Strip? What was the venue?
Yeah, so the hotel that gave her the $1 million contract was the Desert Inn. That also doesn't exist anymore.
I've stayed there. I know. I've stayed there that was the first hotel I ever stayed at when I was a kid at 8 years old. It was bulldozed, and it's now what the Wynn Hotel essentially is.
Okay.
Is on this, the Wynn Hotel is now the kind of the area that the Desert Inn. I had no idea.
So as I said, she wasn't like 12 months of the year. It was 16 weeks because she would perform in other places.
Okay, understood.
She was probably connected to the Desert Inn, I think, for at least 6-7 years.
Wow.
In the 70s.
I was there in 89. So I don't know when she was there, but I mean, maybe not that long.
I'd say the 70s she did. So what was happening, what I also feature in the book, which the dancers might find interesting, or entertainers, is that I have to research part of what was happening in the industry at the time, because both on Broadway and then in Vegas, so what happened in Vegas is that it was probably a combination of Atlantic City legalizing gambling, and then suddenly that popped up as a place to perform. But acts were struggling. There were a few economic struggles in the 70s in the US. By the sort of early 80s, only really the big stars could have their own act, and they were starting to pair up. The truth is that Juliet was now in her 40s.
Okay, and she was that's a more mature dancer.
She was still doing amazing lifts and stuff that I still marvel at. But towards the beginning of the 80s, and she performed right up until about 83 as an act, and a combination of having to double up with maybe another act that's a singer. I know she doubled up with Andy Williams or Joel Grey, who was from Cabaret. That, as well as probably every dancer knows about their injuries and the injuries. So now she's in her 40s, she's 45, her body started just creaking. She first had a back op and then a knee op and then a hip op. So,
oh my gosh.
So yeah.
That's a lot to do. Well, I'm not surprised that her movement was pretty spectacular. I'm curious to know, do you know what her background and training was? Because I know she was part of Johannesburg Ballet. She has a very strong ballet technique, but then there's a musical theater element. Did I read somewhere that there's ballroom as well that she did?
So just on the background, she went to a ballet school in Johannesburg that actually, at my book launch, I had someone that actually was from that ballet school and danced with my aunts, a guy in his 80s.
Oh,
and he got up and sort of said that it was somebody that brought the Royal Academy of Dance from the UK to South Africa, and training of teachers and the qualifications. And it was really good quality dance instruction. Mm-hmm. And she actually, when she went over to London, she wanted to be a ballet dancer, but she was tall. And it was an era of
too tall.
She was too tall. She's like,
what was her height?
5'7". She's 5'7.5", but I've realized all dancers longer. Well, if they carry themselves well, they look so much taller.
Her legs are, maybe it's maybe her torso's on the shorter side, because her legs are just they look forever long.
Hip. So I did inherit her physique a bit, but as like when I stand, because I was a runner, but when I'm next to her, hips were actually, well, wait, I'm going to say her hips were tiny. When I knew her as my aunt, and let's say I was age 10, she was really lean. She was in her 40s. But actually, if I go back, she and Elvis used to joke about their weight, because, he used to laugh at her about her weight, and then he put on a bit of weight in the next movie or whatever. And, they had quite a fun relationship. So I discovered through this process that she struggled with her weight at times because she loved eating. And it was interesting. So if she was in a musical with not as strenuous dancing, that's when she struggled a little bit with weight. But when she had her act and she had to dance all the time, then the pounds would fall off.
She was lean.
Yes, she was
so
lean.
You mentioned Elvis Presley. That was a relationship before or after Sinatra?
During. It wasn't. I wouldn't call it a relationship. It was kind of fun.
She was engaged to Sinatra. I mean, that's pretty serious.
No, so it was 6 months into dating Sinatra. But Sinatra, when he was in LA,
she cheated on Frank Sinatra with Elvis.
Yeah. But he deserved it. He was dating multiple people.
So he was cheating on her too. Oh my gosh. This is like a soap opera.
It was, it was her first big love. And she was what, 23 and he was 44.
Oh, wow. That's a huge age gap. Okay.
And he was like, really in the height of the Rat Pack. And she was dating him when I don't know if you remember, there's this infamous summit at the Sands, which was the Rat Pack at the Sands Hotel in Vegas. Okay. She was dating him at that time. But when he left LA, he would not call her. And I was quite impressed with her that she decided just not to nag him or ask him, she was like, there's no other way to be in a relationship with him. But when she found a little bit of interest, he was quite jealous, actually. So with Elvis,
Elvis Presley is kind of a big deal of that era. I mean, hold on a second. Was he with his
Priscilla?
Priscilla at the time?
Yes, but I think she was so he was fresh out of the army, and I think she was quite young. So she was still a teenager, I think. So I think
they met when she was a teen, but then they didn't marry until later. Am I wrong? Okay. So the fling relationship, whatever you want to call it, with Elvis.
It's a short thing. I've gathered that Elvis got involved with many of his leading ladies. That's what I heard. So I don't think it was
that's what the movie at least depicted, as though there was a lot of women around. So okay, so they whatever. That's I guess whatever floats her boat. She was definitely not your traditional woman of that era. That's for sure.
No. But it wasn't like a big deal with Elvis. It was just fun. And he was 2 years older than her. And she writes to my grandmother and says, I can just be myself, whereas with Sinatra, because he's 21 years old and all of the people around him are let's say in their 40s and she's in her 20s.
Right.
She's a little bit more on guard and a little bit less relaxed. And so.
Right. That's hilarious. I mean, those are two pretty big names of that era. So yes. She definitely had high standards what she was into.
the other, just interesting. I find it funny in South Africa. So when I talk about, someone who knows a name, and I'll say Elvis and Frank Sinatra, and then The Bold and the Beautiful, that soap opera.
Oh, yes.
I don't know how big that was in the US. Yeah, so she ends up marrying the main dad. His name, it was Eric Forrester in The Bold and the Beautiful. It's John McCook. And it was really big in South Africa. And so when I would say, oh, yes, and then she dated Elvis and Sinatra, but she married Eric Forrester from The Bold and the Beautiful. The reaction was always like, oh, wow, almost more for The Bold and the Beautiful than for Sinatra,
That is funny. Now, did she stay in a committed marriage for a long time, or did her romantic life go all over the place? Okay, she stayed married.
I think she was, so she did stay married. She stayed in that marriage. She was in that relationship for 7 years.
Okay.
But I think she wasn't your typical,
she wasn't a housewife. She definitely wasn't your typical housewife. Wife of that.
She had way too much fun. As I said, she dances with her tribe. And so she actually, so even when her body was starting to break down, she didn't want to teach or choreograph or anything like that, that she just really wanted to perform. And so she performed right up to the end. She with the sugar babies that you mentioned, she got cancer. She got pancreatic cancer. And is
that the reason for her passing? Yeah. Oh,
yes.
Wow. My grandfather died of pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, it's not the greatest cancer. She performed with Mickey Rooney in Vegas. I don't know which hotel now, whether it was the Desert Inn or the Hilton, but she performed months before she died.
Wow. So she literally danced her entire life until her bitter last days. Wow. Yes. That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. This is wild to me. All these names are names that I've heard of, never that I've actually met or worked with. So dancers, you may not know a lot of these names that she's mentioned, but you got some homework to do. Your parents might know these names, and your grandparents definitely know these names. But I'd like to open up for Q&A. I'm just looking at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh. So let's start off with Miss Jade. Introduce yourself, and what is your question?
Hi, my name is Jade Robinson, and I'm 20 years old, calling from Florida today. My question is to you, what was the biggest impact your aunt has made on your life?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually sort of feel it in she impacted on me a lot. She was my only aunt. She was, as I said, fun-loving, generous of her spirit, and she would come and visit us in South Africa frequently. I think what I learned most from her is her zest for life. She just went out there and had a great time and would have fun, and not all of her life was rose, but had this positive attitude about it. So I took that into life, that go and seize life and make the most of it. I also realized later in life that I'm a very independent person, and I think I got that from her. Yeah, I'd say the message is have fun and work hard, enjoy yourself, that kind of, and go and explore the world rather than sort of living a more sheltered life. She was also in Mame, the musical, and there's a song in Mame, and I was like, oh, that's my aunt. So Mame has a nephew that comes to her because her brother dies, Mame's brother dies, and she's singing to the nephew, It's like open a new window, open a new door, follow a new horizon you've never
Mhm.
followed before. That speaks to me about my aunt when I hear that.
I love that. I love that. And I love your accent too, by the way. This has been
Thank
super
you.
enjoyable.
Now, did
Thank
she
you so
hold
much.
on to the accent when she moved to the US, or did she flip flop, or did she completely lose it?
It's interesting. So she actually picked up a bit of a British accent. My grandmother and my aunt and my dad were born in India, and it was a British colony at that stage. So my grandmother had a bit of a British accent, and then Juliet had a bit of a British accent. And actually, when she was waiting for work, 20th Century Fox said she should try and change her accent. That almost like we're not getting work because she's had this British accent. I would say her accent was American, but for Americans, it was softer. For South Africans, it was American accent, but so it was a softer American accent. I mean, what was she there? She was there 36, 37 years.
Yeah, but some people hold on to their accents from childhood and never give it up. I mean, I know lots of people that have moved to the US and they still hold on to whatever accent they're from. It just depends if they've tried to assimilate with the locals or if they wanted to hold on to their roots. So, yeah, very cool. Just
I think
curious.
possibly that because she was in South Africa for only 14 years. So she, from the age of, let's say, 3.5 to age 17, maybe. We have 11 official languages here, and she didn't learn. So one of them is a Dutch-based language. It's from Dutch, and she didn't really pick that up. And so that's why I think she didn't have the strongest South African accent to start with.
Understood. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jade, for your question. Next up, we have Serena.
Hi, my name is Serena Wright. I'm 18 years old, calling from Texas today. We've talked so much about your aunt today and her successful career, but I wanted to know what carrying a big name like hers has affected your life.
Okay, great question. I've been asked at some of my book talks whether I felt like I was living in her shadow or I had something to prove. And I didn't at all. And I actually, when I got asked that question, actually a friend asked me before I had the book launch. And then I phoned my mom and I was like, why did I feel like zero pressure? I felt nothing. So from having that name or from, the fact that she did so well. And our conclusion was that so back in the 60s and 70s, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't as much media. And so we didn't actually know she was as big a star as what she was, because she'd come to South Africa and would be completely down to earth. She wouldn't wear makeup. We'd play cards. We had a holiday house at the beach, and she never came with her sort of airs and graces. And actually, she vehemently didn't like anyone in show business who had lots of airs and graces. And so I never felt I could just carry on with, doing my own thing. As was said in the introduction, I'm not graceful. I'm not a dancer. I can't do the splits. I did gymnastics and I did other sports. I can't do the splits properly. I was like never going to become a dancer. Actually, I went to ballet class when I was 7, and my ballet teacher was in class with my aunt when they were kids.
Oh, wow.
And she eventually said to my mom, the ballet teacher, that I had coat hanger shoulders. And I do have these very stiff shoulders. They're very rigid. And I'm like, oh, never. Yeah. So I'm so I just went off into other areas of sport, and I did well. And so it was never a problem, but great question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Next up, we have Laura Lay.
Hi, my name is Lorelai, and I'm calling from Boston, Massachusetts. And what would you say your connection with your aunt was like?
She was lovely, as I said. So I have 3 brothers, and she came over regularly. I mean, a fun thing is that she would bring over American presents for us, which we really loved and we still talk about. So she'd bring over things we didn't have in South Africa that was available in the US. I'm talking a long time ago, like the first Walkmans, which don't exist anymore. We were like, I know. Yeah. I also was lucky enough to get a running scholarship from the University of Nebraska. So I came over to the US in the late 80s, early 90s. So I flew straight to LA first, and I was her first niece or nephew to come and visit her. And besides the fact that she took me to Disneyland and Universal Studios and various things, she was, as I said, very down to earth, we never disagreed on hardly anything. We, in our whole lives, we have disagreed 2 or 3 times about something. A lovely relationship with my aunt. I feel very blessed. I write in my book, in my introduction, if you're only going to have one aunt, this is the aunt to have, like a
pretty
fun
cool aunt that you have.
She was, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I feel blessed that I had it.
Absolutely. All right. Next up, we have Haley.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Haley, and I'm calling from Arizona today. I was wondering if you self-published your book or if you went the more traditional way and how that process has been.
That is a very good question because I've been questioning myself about this process. So I did go out to publishers and I did get some interest from 2 independent US publishers. The one wanted global rights, so which meant that they would have all the rights and I couldn't have any books in South Africa because it was important for me. I kind of, after all the effort and all the work, I wanted to see my book in a bookshop. I wanted to see it on the shelf. So I eventually decided to self-publish. And I will say, for anyone who's ever thinking of that, it is quite a process. The whole, you write the book, but then you've got to get an editor to help you and then work with a book production person on the layout. So I've read my book, I don't know, so many times, I can't read it again, because basically to check for mistakes, and it is actually very fulfilling, but it was, I think, honestly, more work than I realized. So, and then as I chatted to a friend who got a publisher, so you finish all of this, you finally have the book, and then you've got to start promoting it. And when my friend had a publisher, I said, well, how was it, how was it for him? And because I've been doing it all myself. And he said, no, it was actually a lot of work for him as well. So there are those 3 processes. You write, the book production is another part, and then the promotion part of it, the talking about it and various things.
So you're in that phase, hence why you're here.
I'm in that phase. And probably what's also been just an interesting experience is a different experience in South Africa to the US, because she's well known to people, let's say in their 70s and 80s in South Africa. She really is. She is really well known, and so the South African press lapped up the story and been on radio and a few times and lots of publications. And the American press.
Maybe I need to connect you with my publicist and get you published or get you more media in the US, because I'm sure there's people that would be interested in knowing about this.
The audience that has been great has been the dancers. In some ways, I think that's fitting, because
sure.
I don't know. It's a lot of work. It has been a lot of work. So, but very fulfilling. And I'm very happy that I've done this and left this legacy for my aunt.
Well, congratulations for self-publishing a book. I know a few people that have done that, and it's no easy task. I'm curious to know, how long did it take you from the first time you started writing to actually the release of the book?
There was COVID.
When you're stuck at home.
So you actually asked me a question right at the beginning, which I haven't answered. I read in one of the newspaper articles that my aunt there was a box of letters somewhere, or there were letters somewhere. And I started actually putting the quotes together, let's say early 2020. And then obviously COVID happened. I was going to fly to the US in 2020 and go and speak to people. And so I was writing just with newspaper articles and my research. And then I flew to the US in 2022 when it sort of opened up and we could, it was easier to fly. And so when I got there, I don't know why, but her last boyfriend had the box of 640 letters in his garage in Las Vegas. And I only brought those to South Africa in the middle of 2022. Okay. And it was a gold mine to get those letters. So I had to kind of I didn't throw everything away, but I had to rewrite. I had her words, and I was so much better, it was much richer story. I could be very honest. I had moments in writing, just by the way, where I had imposter syndrome. So I didn't want to make up anything about her that was not true, or, that I was using poetic license, just being an author writing. And it got to a stage where I knew that the people were alive. People who would be reading this could tell that I was writing rubbish. To answer your question, I started in 2020. I lost a bit of confidence in 2021. And then I finished writing probably end of 23.
Okay.
But then the whole going out to publishers and waiting, that takes much longer than you realize. So going out to publishers and working in book with an editor and then book production took a year.
That makes sense. No easy task. So dancers, if you ever want to write a book and self-publish, know that it's not a easy task. And there's definitely different ways, whether you get a publishing deal or whether you self-publish. And now there's ebooks. Now you don't even have to publish a physical hard copy anymore. Now you can even just do it straight to ebook, which I've seen people do as well. So
the one thing I would say, just this is a message I've not actually shared a lot. It's really trying to record some of your parents and grandparents' stories, like before they pass on. Just because there's I don't know, there's such wonderful, there's stories within stories, and that I've learned. Well, my parents are alive, and I've asked them various things, and I've been able to add, to the story. So
I think that's great advice, especially for future grandkids and great grandkids that may not be able to meet these relatives, to be able to know their family history. I think is really fascinating. You don't have to have a famous aunt to do this and to share this and to write this. That's great advice. You just made me think of, oh my gosh, I should have done that last week. I was with my grandparents who are in their mid-90s, still healthy. And I was with them last week in Portugal, and I never recorded them telling their stories. And that is something I should have done.
Yes.
They've told me, but I haven't recorded them. I think that's the recording part that's really fascinating. So you get straight from the source and you don't forget the details.
Well, I think it's the decisions that people make. So only by me asking did I, discover how my grandmother and my father and aunt got from India to South Africa. How did that happen? Besides the fact that my grandfather died, but just various things. Why was that decision made? I don't know. Maybe when you get older, you want to. I'm actually very nostalgic.
Curious. Yeah, yes, so am I. I did the whole DNA ancestry.com to find out my past. I did the family tree. I'm very curious about that type of stuff too. I don't know. It fascinates me. Some people don't even care about that stuff. They're like, beyond my grandparents, I don't care. But I'm curious, how did the family go from here to here? Like, as you said, how did they get from India to South Africa? And then you wonder even, how did Juliet go from the UK to America, to the US and so on. So very cool. Well, thank you so much, Haley, for your question. Final question from one of our mentees is Gabrielle. Introduce yourself and what is your question?
Hi, my name is Gabrielle. I'm calling in from Laval, Quebec. First of all, thank you so much for your time. And my question was, how has publishing this book impacted your life? And has it made you feel any closer to your aunt in the process?
It most definitely has. So obviously I knew her and I spent time with her. It's impacted in many ways. So reading the letters, I got the full rounded picture of a human being that gets elated, and probably to know as the dancers, she had sweet charity. She won awards in Vegas and London, and she just expected the opportunities to come her way. And 6 months later, she's frustrated, that they're not rolling in. And what I love is that she's writing to her mom, and she's actually a bit depressed, and she's like, I'm still producing an act. Sure, it's for more money, and it's now the full hour and a half, and not the 45 minutes. But she says, but that's not advancement. So it was quite interesting to see insights into her ambition and what she really wanted to do with quality work. The side effect from producing a book and holding talks, I've really loved. So I was saying earlier that my first book launch I had at an academy in Cape Town. We have a theatre, and it's an academy that's linked to the theatre. And I invited dancers in Cape Town that are the head of Cape Town Ballet, various dancers. And the connection I've had with dancers has been just like wonderful and not unexpected, but I'm not really in the dancing world on a day-to-day basis. But so at least 3 of the dancers came up to me and sort of looked at me and said that I look like her, look like my aunt, which I was like totally blessed with. I was like very happy because I didn't necessarily think that I looked like her. And just, yeah, so sharing her story and getting enthusiasm from dancers who know her. As I said, she was well known in South Africa. So I've go and give talks. I've given a few talks at sort of my mom's retirement village and things like that. And some of the comments have been, that I've helped these elderly people relive their youth because I'm showing footage of some of the stars of the day, whether it's Sinatra or Elvis or Dean Martin or stuff like that. And I show footage as part of my book talk. So it's been this lovely connection with people that I didn't visualize maybe 2 years ago. I just visualized producing a book. But it's been, besides getting to know my aunt better and more of her insights and it's also the people I've met.
I love that. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for your question.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I have a question for you. What advice do you think she would give today, if she were still with us, to young aspiring professional dancers when it comes to the business side of dance? What do you think she would say?
So one thing I took from writing this is how hard she worked. Also trying to, as I mentioned earlier, connect, be creative, and try and connect with other people who are maybe the really, I guess I'm talking, when she created her act, she got really some of the best people together to help her create an act. I don't know if it was different at that time. I read a quote by an actor who won a Tony Award, Ben Vereen. And Ben Vereen was in Sweet Charity with my aunt. Sweet Charity was created by Bob Fosse, who should be well known to everyone, I would think. But,
yes. Dancers, I hope you know who Bob Fosse is. If you don't, look him up too.
He created Sweet Charity. He created Chicago as well from scratch. So, and then also directed Cabaret, the movie. And so he's won Tonys and many Tonys, and I think he won an Oscar. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, so Ben Vereen said it was only when he was working with Bob Fosse and Juliet that he realized that basically it was almost like the harder you work, the better opportunities will come your way. So trying to do the best you can, because then you'll get the opportunities, better opportunities, was really one of his insights. And it was almost like he didn't realize, I'm not actually articulating the quote very well, but basically realizing that the good opportunities will come if you actually put in the work, that kind of thing.
I get the sense of the feeling of the famous quote, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And when you work hard, yes, you are prepared. And when you are prepared and an opportunity presents itself, therefore you are quote unquote lucky, because she obviously put in the work and she did not wait for permission, and she created her own opportunities, and that drew attention. And the more attention that she got, more opportunities started coming her way. She achieved, she's a dance icon, and, it's truly been a pleasure to speak to you as well during this whole process and learning more about her through your lens and from what you've learned from her writings and newspaper articles.
I've looked up the quote because I thought.
Oh, you found it. Okay.
Yeah, I've just looked it up in my book. He said, I started working at it for the value of making it for the value of the work. So, yeah. He said, it's basically, it wasn't until he worked with Juliet and Bob and saw how hard they worked that he understood what was required in show business.
I like that. It reminds me of Anita Mann, who's also from that era. She said, work breeds work. So when you put in the work, it leads to more work. And that clearly was the case for Juliet. She continuously worked and worked and worked and worked till the day she died, it sounds like, which was remarkable. And what age was she when she passed?
She was only 59. I know for the younger.
That's young. That's young.
It's actually young. Yeah,
that's very young. It's older, more mature for a dancer, perhaps, but yes, in the grand scheme of life, it's a very young age.
Yeah, I'd say her hectic, very athletic dancing kind of ended more, I think, at about 46, 48. So she was doing musical theater.
Okay.
up until the time she died.
That's still very impressive. And dancers, if you have not watched her videos, you need to watch her videos. You understand the athleticism. She had legs for days. Her technique was flawless. She was very acrobatic. She did amazing partnering. And as you said, she was quite the cheeky performer. It sounds like on and off stage.
Yes.
Well, before we wrap up, where can everyone find and buy your book?
So it is on Amazon. So it's Juliet Prowse, Born to Dance. It's also at Barnes & Noble for the Canadian, I think. It's on Amazon, so it's on Amazon.
Amazon.ca, Amazon.com. Then so on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Well, that's pretty accessible to everyone here on the call. Well, on behalf of everyone here at the Business of Dance, we appreciate you. We thank you. Dancers, show her your love. Your virtual heart way.
Thank you, everyone.
The very unique and rare conversation. We've never had a guest come on here talking about another dance icon that's related to it. Like, this is definitely an unusual interview that we've done. And I hope, dancers, that you guys have appreciated the history that you just got a dance history lesson. And if you didn't write these names down, you need to watch the replay or listen to the podcast, because she just run down all kinds of historical, legendary names that you should all know. I think it's important to know, it's because of dancers like her that we get to do what we do today, especially the females on this call, because she was a pioneer of her time as a female entertainer. She definitely broke a lot of barriers, because of dancers like her. We now get to do what we do today. So, Juliet, it was such a pleasure talking to you. And thank you so much for reaching out. Also, was a huge, I have to tell the story though. I was dancers. So I get this email from Juliet Prowse and I was like, hold on a second. I'm like, isn't this the famous dancer? But I'm like, but isn't she passed? I'm like, I was so confused and I had to reread the email again. I'm like, oh, it's her niece. And I'm like, they have the same name. So I thought that was wild. You definitely got my attention. I get a lot of solicitation emails, by the way, from different guests, but yours really caught my attention. And really it was because your name. It was your name that caught my attention. That was the like I had to do a double take and be like, wait a minute, who is this? So
thank you.
So, and now how can people find you as the person? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook or how?
So I've created a Facebook profile for Juliet Prowse Dancer. I also have a website with julietprowse.com. I am on Instagram. I'm not as well, I'm reasonably prolific, but not super prolific. I'm more trying to doctor up her videos. Well, because they're old video quality. That's and put those on.
All of that. Do you have VHS cassettes that you have to digitize, or is all this already online?
I got video in. But unfortunately, and I have gone out to a company, but if you don't get the source, the original, whatever it was produced on, it's going to be the quality that it is. But so Juliet Prowse Dancer, or actually the YouTube channel is Juliet Prowse, just Juliet Prowse, and so there is footage up there already, but there's still a lot more to add. So I'm slowly adding all of that.
Okay, so you're the mastermind behind the YouTube channel, is what I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Very cool. And do you know that handle? Was it Juliet Prowse?
I think it's just Juliet. It's either Juliet _Prowse. Yeah.
So dancers, look that up.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much, Juliet. Such a pleasure, such an honor. Dancers, I hope you understand the royalty of dance that just walked in the building, and the stories were, and then look in the chat as well. Gabrielle said, thank you so much for your time. It was amazing to learn about you and your aunt. Thank you, Menina, for making this call happen. Amazing. All right, everyone, signing off. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
And that concludes another episode of the Business of Dance podcast.
We hope you found today's conversation insightful and gained valuable knowledge.
Be sure to join us next time for more inspiring interviews with top professionals in the dance industry.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to The Business of Dance on your favorite platform and take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated.
This podcast is brought to you by the Business of Dance online mentorship program to help aspiring professional dancers create their dream dance careers.
Thank you for listening. Until next time.